Yeah, hi, I'm Neil King, a co-founder at Swift Security. Swift Security is building a platform to safely enable enterprises to adopt generative AI. And we've been interviewing security and AI leaders to help the broader community learn how security practitioners are dealing with unique security risks associated with generative AI. And today I'm talking to Ravi Viswanathan, who's a security leader with recent security experience at Amazon, BMO, and Abbott. I've gotten to know Ravi over the past couple of years and really enjoy his perspectives and insights around emerging security challenges. So before we get started, just a quick disclosure, the views expressed here in the session are solely based on our personal experiences in the industry and not connected to any current or prior employers. So great. To start with, Ravi, can you please describe your current role and experience in the industry?
Hey, thank you, Neil, for this opportunity to participate here on this podcast. Just as an introduction, my name is Ravi Viswanathan. I I am predominantly most of my work experience has been in Fortune 100s and primarily in. I started out as an IT and then it moved into cybersecurity. For about 20 years now, I'm actively involved in primarily focusing my time and attention in cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, regulatory obligations, and this is mostly in Fortune 100 setting, in healthcare, fintech, banking, automotive, and most recently the e-commerce sector. And I, in my current role, I do a lot in the product cybersecurity side, but also this dates back to my prior experiences in my with my previous employers as well. So everything, I kind of enjoy applying cybersecurity, not at the enterprise level, but in products, in how consumers or customers use it, and find ways to enable some newer thinking in the product, but at the same time, ensure that it performs optimally with appropriate cybersecurity controls. So that's where my specialty comes into play.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we've been talking for a while, and you always have great insights. So looking forward to getting into this session, which will be focused really on Gen AI and some of the security challenges that are unique to companies that are starting to adopt Gen AI in a variety of ways. So as it relates to Gen AI, what are the top types of projects that you are seeing or hearing about in your network? So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Some thoughts, right? A lot of people, everybody is on this AI journey. I'm also in that journey. I'm also a small boat in that large lake, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the way I'm trying to conceptualize this, and this is a very rapidly growing field, Neil. You know this as much as anybody else here, right? Um, there's a tons of there's foundational models, LLMs there. There are custom LLM apps. There are and these are all progressing at rapid rates in terms of how quickly they evolve and how we need to keep up with the trends there. So some of the things that I'm seeing are hearing in my network, but even before we go there, right? Let me share my internalized conception of this model, right? I see large language models as simply an operating system, like how Windows, we called it Windows, Unix, Linux before, but we're calling them foundation, these foundational LLMs now. Now these are operating systems right now. So the customer or custom LLLs, they're like apps. So that's how I'm differentiating in my mind. So these custom LLMs are sitting on top of these foundational LLMs, and then they're doing magic. That's where the commercial angle is. So the custom LLMs are used in a variety of use cases. It could be, like you could do coding assistance. You could automate coding. You could put them like in our industry. I'm in the e-commerce side or banking e-commerce side. So fraudulent monitoring, fraudulent transactions, chatbot interfaces, or even putting these custom LLMs in what you call. You have a large e-commerce website, right? And then you have products that you sell on the e-commerce website. Now, when you're selling products, you're also, customers leave review of the products. When they review, when they put those reviews, at a glance, you want to read like 10,000 reviews. You don't have time to review all those, but at a glance, you could use a custom LLM to look at all the reviews and say, here is the summarized version. Here are the plus. Here are the strengths. Here are the weaknesses. Right. So bringing those real time inferences on those customer reviews and adding value to the customer. The other use case could be like improving threat intelligence. In the past, threat intelligence is a field where human security researchers have put their time and effort in understanding what is happening out in the wild and applying those concepts into sharing that knowledge with global enterprises. So what's happening now is we're putting these custom LLMs in front of these threat aggregators, and we're trying to figure out what is the probability of these security issues or potential incidents to materialize in this business context in this sector. And and the way we are doing this is it's looking for indicators of compromise and then trying to say the chances of this happening is 80% now compared to 40% before, because the threat velocity is increasing. Those automatic calculation computation, you don't need a security researcher to do. So the LLMs do that by themselves and then bring that inferences to companies. So there are a lot of use cases like these that are materializing. Some of them useful, some of them not so useful. But we're all on this journey together. That's been my experience. But Neil, I want to also punt this back to you. What are your thoughts here, please?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to a lot of customers and are working with a number of customers as well. So we have customers that are developing applications for their end users. And so, they're, like one of our customers is using AI to help develop stories for 5 to 13-year-olds, right? So they have, they're using the benefits of the creativity of generative AI to create these stories, but they're also worried about the creativity exposing young children to inappropriate content or toxic content potentially. So those are some areas that we're kind of working with them to address some issues. But we also talk to a lot of companies that are looking at. I mean, I guess the use cases we hear the most are things related to customer support, enterprise search, and coding assistants, and more generally co-pilots like Microsoft's Gemini. Those are the ones we hear most frequently. But yeah, there really are. There's a huge tail on this as well in terms of use cases.
Yeah, there are so many places where we can apply this, right? That's what's fascinating. It's fascinating in terms of the level of automation that you can do, and the customer impact, how quickly you can bring the customer impact in those use cases. Those are fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah, and we're looking at all these use cases in terms and the risks that they present to enterprises that are adopting these tools, but we're also using LLM capabilities to help make our products better as well. So we're sort of looking at this in both ways. Well, good.
Awesome.
Let me jump to the next question. So here, and I think we started to lead into this already. But when you think about the unique challenges and the new challenges that are created by the adoption of generative AI, what are the things you worried about, or what are the things you hear about from some of your colleagues that you talk to about these risks?
So Neil, I'm in the e-commerce side now. Before I was in the health banking side, and then I was in healthcare. From a security standpoint, right? So if you just look at the challenges to Gen AI, people talk about visibility, governance, data protection. So those are all in everybody's mind, right? But when you let's zoom in into the specific sector where I'm operating, I'll share some of the things that's in my mind. So within the e-commerce side, you're looking at bot-based attacks, ATOs, account takeovers, and you could also look into fraudulent products or content forgery, content fraud, meaning somebody can, we all know this, somebody, fake videos, content being changed, and potential to lose that content authenticity, right? So when these things happen, what happens is it's fundamentally looking into breaking customers' trust, and that's a huge thing, right? The Gen AI having the capability to do a lot of good things is one on the one hand. On the other hand, we see these disruptive possibilities. That concerns me, right? Um, and for that matter, I would even say, most of our social security numbers are out in the wild already. And these are, there is this, some there is a breach happening someplace, and because of that breach, that leads into another incident. And then, we're all connected. If our work is closely connected to our personal identity, and then if if our personal identity is breached somewhere, it gets into our work, and vice versa too. So the things that are happening now is like nothing is secure. And with how the rapid pace of AI, ML, LLM, and also the advancements in some areas of quantum computing, where they're saying our current encryption could be broken in the next 5-10 years because of the advancements in quantum computing, right? So those are all some concerns, and um, we are at some point in time we worry about those, but at the same time we're also looking into advancing these, and finding the good use cases and developing them. So in terms of my from a usability perspective, right, I want to give some autonomous option to the models, but at the same time, I want to front end it with some human to measure the performance, measure the output before it could be fully automated into like a you know uh, agentic application or things of that nature. So I'm still a little wary, but I should say I'm thoughtfully I'm cautious about the good use cases overpowering the bad use cases, and it benefits the community. So those are my rough thoughts. I know I'm not too focused here on my response, but how do you feel about from where you are? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think there are, I guess from our perspective, some of the challenges we've been focused on so far are challenges around visibility, challenges around data protection, starting to think about challenges related to, threats unique threats that are starting to arise for custom LLM applications, things like prompt injection and jailbreaking. We're also looking at, for companies that are starting to adopt coding assistants. What are the unique threats, associated with, shifting the kind of the development to the left of the developer, right? And how do we
Mhm.
try to protect against the content generated by these tools, and make sure that, provide extra protections in place. Those are some of the things that we've been focused on. You brought up a bunch of interesting examples. So like one of the things I thought of in the context of, e-commerce and other, sites where there are a lot of reviews in places, you know, could be I think it's an interesting opportunity now for people to generate tons of reviews, very cheaply. But maybe there's also some opportunities for technology to identify, reviews that are not as trustworthy. So I think that was sort of one thought I came up with when you were talking about, kind of trust in that relationship and, e-commerce generally. Um, one kind of thought I wanted to follow up with you on also is just from a, enterprise perspective, maybe no matter what the enterprise, but let's just say like a, larger enterprise, maybe in a regulated vertical. Um, you know, if a company is looking to adopt something, some general purpose LLM and give all their employees access to it to increase their productivity, what are some of the things that you would want to make sure you have in place to feel comfortable making that sort of tool available for a large portion of a employee population.
Some thoughts, Neil. That's a very interesting question, right? Um, in highly compliance and regulatory driven industries where PHI, EPHI, PII, payments critical data, these are all important to protect. We have fiduciary responsibility to protect this data that we are getting from the customer, but it is in our repository, data repository, right? And we're exposing these outside. Um, Getting that buy-in from compliance and legal teams is crucial. There are, in my experience, right? Um, Compliance, regulatory, legal, internal audit. These teams are the toughest to convince because they are they're like a human guardrails, ensuring our processes, our first line of defense, second line of defense, are in place that provides that customer trust. So walking back from the customer trust part, they need to be convinced that these tools are working fine. So that means that um, um, some of the legalities, country specific laws that we need in this space, that needs to amp up. The boundary conditions need to be set, right? Without those boundary conditions, what can you not do? Let's be very clear on that. Let's document that. Let's all align on that, gain some consensus on that, right? Getting that done is extremely important in my mind. And then those what can you not do's can be different for different companies, right?
Right.
But there could be a legal framework from a country specific framework that you can adopt, that you can derive from in terms of what you cannot do for an e-commerce industry versus a healthcare industry versus
Yeah.
a banking industry, right? So once we phrase that, everything else will sort of settle down from there, is my opinion. But
Mm.
that's a broader response to your question. I don't know if that if you're able to resonate with that. I'm open to hearing from your what do you think here could be some of the things that we can do as a community.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think for these, particularly for these highly regulated verticals, compliance and legal are one of the key hurdles you have to overcome to, start using these new tools to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's not creating any regulatory risks that you weren't aware of. When it comes
Hmm.
to particularly a lot of the publicly available LLMs, depending on what version of the LLM you're using, they may or may not train in your data. A lot of the companies I've talked to are very worried about, you know, co either, you know, um, PII type data or, company IP making their way into into these LLMs and having them train on their data. So, making sure that if you do allow your customers to use these tools, that they use the corporate version that has, training off by default, and even still, you may want to kind of block or warn sensitive data from going to these models just in an abundance of caution. So those are the things we hear about, time and time again from a lot of companies in terms of things they want to put in place. And I think if you can put the right tools in place to ensure that the sort of data that you want to protect are not going to these sites, then we think that can help a lot in getting the compliance team on board with allowing these tools and the resulting productivity benefits that can be available when you adopt these tools.
Yeah, that's a it's an important point. It's an often overlooked point these days, but what you said is making a lot of sense in terms of using company provided tools to use this. Like, remember, I remember we were talking about the insurance company providers using something like this, where they have a possibility to share customer information for knowledge training. So yeah, that's a very valid point, Neil.
Yeah, unlike some other tools where you can, you share your data, you can go take it back or ask them to destroy it or whatever, how do you remove data from an LLM? I don't think anyone knows how to do that. So I think it's even more important than maybe some other areas to make sure your data doesn't, go somewhere it shouldn't because it's virtually impossible to take it back. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so I think, kind of continuing on this, enterprise adoption use case, so a lot of, in addition to just using, kind of public, LLMs trained on public data, obviously a lot of enterprises are starting to work with and deploy basically, RAG applications that work with their own data and provide deeper insights on data that's not public. Obviously, when doing that, you end up with a situation where you're by definition dealing with sensitive data, and there are new sets of concerns that can come to mind. But what do you think about when you think about RAG applications and potential security risks associated with those?
Yeah, rags are cool. I'm really, really close to rag, right? Because it's really closer to the end customer. Unlike a foundational LLM, the way I internalize RAG is you connect a huge a foundational LLM to or a custom LLM to a huge data repository for to get specific business outcomes, right? An example of how rags work is like a post-operative patient in healthcare using a chatbot to interact with after their surgery for any post-operative questions on their medicine regimen or can they go for a walk, drug interaction, recovery, any questions that they have. They can, instead of working with a nurse or a human or a doctor or a medical doctor, you could use a tool like this that's provided by RAG, a RAG application.
Yeah,
That's one thought there, right?
yeah,
Now,
that's really cool. Instead of like calling the nurse and waiting for however
yeah,
much
yeah,
time for someone to come on or for them to call you back and playing phone tag, you can just get your, answer. You get the same information, at your own convenience. So yeah, I love that idea.
yeah. If you take that RAG to one step further, right? So there are a lot of things happening, and I'm fascinated every day reading the news, seeing the possibilities of how technology is taking shape now. But I've been curious, Neil. When you have embedded technologies connected to RAG, that's been a place where I've been curious about. So I'm curious how RAG, when implemented in like embedded clothing, like I'm talking T-shirt, jeans, like Levi's had something on jeans before. This was about maybe 5, 6 years back, about technology embedded into their jeans. So imagine your clothing continually scanning your body movements, places you go, people you meet, feeding all this into a larger repository, data repository to augment your capability as a human, right? That is fascinating to me. So I think RAG can make that happen if we can connect RAG into embedded technologies like this. So I'm waiting to experience this kind of technology in my lifetime. I don't know if it's possible, if it's going to come that soon or not, but it's something that I keep fascinating about RAG.
Yeah.
So that's really amazing, actually. If you think of it, like Google has Google Glass, and there are healthcare products that are looking at your heartbeat, and it's absorbing your doing your body scan. Nobody goes to you could take your bio rhythm and all those health data through your phone and your watch and other things, right? So technology is going so advanced these days, and I have a feeling there's a lot of improvements that's going to come in the next 5 years that we all will be experiencing soon.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've kind of listened to some of the recent, kind of, I don't know, there's a paper by the, CEO of Anthropic talking about powerful Gen AI potentially being here in 2026, which is, only, a year and a half away. So, if that comes to pass, yeah, things will be very different than they are today. And, things are already pretty advanced versus where they were even a year ago. Yeah, so the rate of progress here is amazing. So on the RAG application side, kind of, I think your examples were really exciting. These are, pretty very innovative, creative ideas. I think a lot of people are using RAG applications for more boring but productive things like customer support use cases or maybe sales enablement use cases. Um, maybe kind of answering HR questions, these sort of things. If a company is rolling out these sort of applications, and I think most companies are at least looking at them, what are the, unique security or data protection risks that come to mind for you?
The model bias, right? This is some of the foundational aspects that we talked earlier applies to it's still a concern for me too, right? Somebody, model inversion attacks, model bias. Out of all those, and data leak, out of all these, my foundational concern here is about the governance aspects of these apps. Again, going back to my prior thinking, right? If I think it's right, but we can even pressure test that a little bit. I feel like once we have the foundational governance elements set, what should you not do? What are you allowed to do? If that is clear, that solves a lot of problems for a lot of use cases. Number two, focusing on data, because data lives in the app layer,
Mhm.
and this is where our focus is. We're not worried about the cloud infrastructure, the network side, or those layers are already covered. There's compute availability, and all those things are already covered. But when you're focusing on the app side, we are mostly concerned about information exiting out, data going out, and data coming in. So
Sure.
if we pay attention to those data leaks, sensitive data leaks, and we ensure that the model tampering is not possible through the inversion model inversion attacks, ensuring that those are kept at bay, some of the basic minimal requirements can be addressed. There could be, yes, there's going to be more advanced problem use cases that will come through, but let's focus on the foundational elements and then get that right. Once we have that right, everything that you built on top of it'll align well to ensuring that we have that customer trust and customer, we don't erode that customer satisfaction from where it is at right now, and we continually seek to optimize that going forward.
Yeah. So one of the things that there's a lot of talk about related to RAG applications is, what's the right way to provide the access control, right? So some of the tools out there are, doing their best to make sure that, as a user, you can only access things via the RAG chatbot that you can access directly. But then the other argument is, for a lot of companies, they don't have the underlying access control in good shape anyway. And
Mhm.
so that's really not good enough. It actually can maybe before there was some data protection by obscurity because you didn't know where to look for things, but now RAG applications are, surfacing these insights that maybe you didn't know you had access to in a much easier and different way. So I don't know if you've thought about these problems at all, but if so, I wanted to give you a chance to share your thoughts.
Yeah, access control is definitely an issue, Neil. And prior, even if you go one step back in that access control part, access are tied to assets, right? So
Mhm.
knowing where my assets are and what state it is, having that visibility across my spectrum of what are my exposed assets, what am I responsible to protect, right? That itself is will these rags will open doors more there. It's going to say at a time, let's say CISOs when they get into a security incident kind of a situation, the very first question they ask is, what am I responsible to protect? Where are my assets? So
Yep.
that itself is half the battle right there. If I know exactly, if I have visibility there, once I know the visibility on the assets, then I look at what kind of access roles are provisioned to who. I go down that path. So
Correct.
it all starts with what am I responsible to defend or protect. That rags will definitely, like you said, will give us more insights into that foundational question, which when we expand on, it'll lead to solving these gaps that we are not aware of right now.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
thinking there.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Great thoughts. So let me jump forward a little bit so into something that's still just in the very early days, agentic applications. So I don't know how much time you spent thinking about agentic applications and the new security risks that these sort of applications will um, create for enterprises. But if you've thought about that, we'd love to hear what sort of concerns that you have, and if you have any thoughts on how to address them.
Yeah. So agentic apps, I come across them. I hear my peers talking about it. I see some use cases where it's deployed. I'll share what I know about it, the way I've internalized it, and some of the security risks of agentic applications that I feel are important to me from my perspective, right? So agentic apps are basically apps that can take autonomous decisions on behalf of a user. Like an example of an agentic application could be like a chatbot, or an extreme example would be like a self-driving car. Like all decisions are done by that app by itself without needing any human input, right? Now the key worry here in an agentic application in my mind is just that quote unquote autonomous decision making.
Right.
So when you're giving control to an app to make certain decisions, again, I'll go back to my earlier thought. That's I'm trying to build from that thought, which is we need to clearly be able to tell agentic apps these are the things that you cannot do. These are the things only humans can do, right? The agentic apps cannot do these things. So once we set those boundary conditions as to what they cannot do, you're reducing your risk level to some extent,
Right.
right? So that's one thought there. Now, um, what's going to happen, I feel like, as these agentic apps are increasing, the threat levels on them will also increase. So there's going to be, instead of humans attacking another humans in a cybersecurity world, we will have bots attacking another bot, an agentic app attacking another agentic app. So the social engineering attack is going to be moved around these agentic apps, somebody trying to get into this and change the integrity of the application so the behavioral can be morphed. So and the other thoughts that we expressed earlier, which is like the model bias, the ethical concerns, our primary security and compliance risks associated with those are all there. um, and if you look at the self-driving cars, I also feel like, going back to our earlier point again, right? The country-specific governance is missing still. The legal ramifications of business use cases when they use agentic apps, we don't have a strong legal foundation here in terms of, this is the framework we will adopt into, and if we deviate from here, this is the repercussion, this is the legal ramifications. We don't have those clearly. There are definitely improvements there. EU is advanced in that, in their legal framework. I'm sure there are a lot of things happening there that I'm not aware of, but until these are solidified clearly, um, we still will have these kinds of gray areas, which we will overcome as we go through them. That's my thinking there. But let me turn this back to you, Neil. What are your thoughts here? What are you working on in terms of agentic apps?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, yeah, I find this to be an interesting area. We're doing R&D on it, having conversations like this to uncover the use cases. Yeah, I do think your visibility is going to be a really big deal here. What are all the LLMs that you have in place? Which ones are agentic? What are the sorts of tools that these agentic applications have access to? What are the permissions and rights they have, to use those tools? Are they over provisioned? Can they expand their permissions in a way that
Mm.
could create risks that you're not aware of? A lot of those sort of things are the things that I've, kind of where I've started thinking about it. Yeah, also, monitoring behavior to see, are these applications doing things that they didn't do in the past, right? Has there been any material changes in the sorts of behavior that they've taken to, identify maybe some tampering or compromise? So those are some of the things I've thought about so far, but I think there's still lots to think about, and you know, um, and really a lot of interesting use cases to figure out there. So I
Yeah,
know.
the technology itself is rapidly advancing there. So like security comes after the technology gets hardened, right?
Right.
So in these agentic apps, technology is morphing. It's a 2024 terminology, right? Like last year we had like LLM, and this year agentic apps, and I think the year before it was quantum computing or something like that. So there are some theoretical aspects, but there are also some practical aspects that are showing up right in front of our eyes, and then we retrofit security to it, or maybe there is security built in that we don't understand yet. So there's so much of learning to do here in these areas for all
Yeah,
of
no,
us.
it's a lot of fun for sure. So I have one final question before we wrap up, which is, what advice would you give to organizations that, want to leverage Gen AI capabilities, while ensuring, robust security and data protection for their enterprise?
Yeah, let's jump at it. There's a lot of. Okay, here's my thought. Let me um, get my thoughts together here. First thought: this is like drinking from a fire hose, right? There's so much happening all at the same time, and we are trying to absorb and at the same time contribute and add some value to the society to the community we live in, right?
Right.
So let's let go of that fear, have that fearlessness of technology, and try to embrace that instead of resisting it. Number two, take small use cases and find value for, take small problem statements, and figure out solutions to those problem statements, using LLMs, large language models, small language models, foundational LLMs, custom LLMs, RAGs, agentic apps, whatever it is. These are all fancy names, but we are trying to automate. That's the foundational element here. We're trying to make things better. So find ways to take a small problem and find solutions to those problems with these technologies, secure the solution, commercialize it, make money out of it. That's if we do these very small steps and find joy in those things, the large things will grow. It'll iterate from there, and it'll advance, and at some point in time it'll be a product, and everybody gets benefited. So that's my, it's not an advice, it's just a thought that I share with myself. It's worked for me, but I'm curious, what others think about this. What is your advice, Neil? What do you think about this area? Maybe the viewers will can learn something from you.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think I definitely resonate a lot with what you shared. Yeah, and for me, I think a lot of a lot of it comes down to taking, I think you've got to move forward. You can't just, I do know a lot of companies that, for example, block everything with a .ai, right? And that may be like an initial reaction is, hey, let's just, you know, uh, shut this down because there may be some risks, but that's, you can't really fight the future. So, I think it's important that, people or organizations find, use cases and start, with the level that they feel comfortable with, get the right visibility, put the right guardrails in place so that they, can do things without, taking undue risk, and then, get some good experience on their belts with, a couple initial use cases, learn from those things, and then extend from there.
Mhm.
So that's, I think I think that, you got to be able to say yes to Gen AI. You need to be able to do it in a way that's safe. And then once you get some experience and learn, you can extend the aperture and take on more and more opportunities, while, building up the experience on how to manage the risks.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Neil.
Good. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. I want to give a huge thanks to you, Ravi, for sharing your experience with and stories with us. Uh, the audience enjoyed this as much as I did. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Neil, for the opportunity to be with you.